So thank you for joining us for today's panel discussion. Although I wish we could be together in person, I think you will still find today's discussion impactful. For those who may not know me, my name is Amber Kordiath, and I am the chair for NAIOP's Women's Leadership Network. WLN is a new committee we started this year to help facilitate career growth, personal development, and professional networking with female peers across the Northern Ohio region. Our events focus on meaningful discussions with influential women and men in commercial real estate. As we have adapted to the new normal, our programming has shifted from including social events for now to creating impactful virtual events such as today's discussion. I would like to thank our NAIOP sponsors. Those are listed for you there on the screen. Vice Chairs Aaron Blaskovic, Shannon Thorson, and the WLN committee. Donna Haters, Maureen Leach, and Sandy Hudson for all their technical support. And of course, I would like to thank our panelists, Tori Nook, Jeff Myers, Gretchen Garofoli, and today's moderator, Deb Janik. I do want to note that there has been a slight change in the program. Unfortunately, Christy Murdoch had a last-minute conflict that arose and is unable to join us. Today, we will be discussing how the retail and restaurant sectors are dealing with the pandemic, and also insights on how and what they are doing to adapt to the new normal. You may submit questions via the questions and answer box, and we will leave time at the end of the discussion to get to as many of those as we can.
Wait, I never wore this.
I will also note that this discussion will be recorded and will be posted on NAIOP's website, as well as emailed to the registrant. So without further ado, I would like to hand it over to Deb Janik for introductions of herself and the panelists. Deb?
Thank you, Amber, and good afternoon to our panelists and our participants. We appreciate you joining us. My name is Deb Janik, and I have the privilege of serving as the Senior Vice President for Business Growth and Development at the Greater Cleveland Partnership. GCP is the regional chamber of commerce in Northeast Ohio and the largest chamber of commerce in the country with more than 12,000 business members. From sole proprietors to Fortune 500 large corporations, GCP is committed to creating an inclusive business climate in Northeast Ohio that allows all businesses in all industries to grow and prosper. Like Amber, I would like to extend my thanks to the NAIOP Northern Ohio Women's Leadership Committee for inviting me today to moderate this webinar. And at this time, I ask that our panelists introduce themselves. Tori?
Tori, I think you're on mute.
Sorry.
No, you're fine.
Hi, my name's Tori Nook, and I'm the principal and co-founder of Anchor Cleveland. We're a boutique commercial real estate brokerage firm located in Beechwood, Ohio. We work all throughout the state of Ohio, representing national, regional, and local retailers and restaurants, as well as developers and landlords. We lease shopping centers all over the state, and we also do a lot of acquisition and disposition of land and shopping centers.
Yeah,
I'm Jeff Myers. I'm owner of DS Architecture. We have offices in downtown Cleveland. We do projects all over the country, from California to Boston to Florida. We have a specific group that focuses on restaurant and retail design, and so that will be the basis of what we talk about today. I do want to take a moment. I am the only male on the panel list. It was an honor to be asked. DS Architecture and myself have a passion in discussing this topic about what I believe is white male privilege, and I think it does exist. I know it exists. I am proud of who I am and who my family is, but my demographic has placed us in situations where there is equality amongst race and sex. My demographic needs to do a better job of not just stating it supports diversity and inclusion, but it actually needs to start actually supporting it by attending these events, by attending events of minorities to aid and assist. We should not be leading the solution, but we should be aiding and assisting. There's nothing more disappointing to me than when I show up to those meetings and I am the only one or one of the only white males there. So I believe this is a platform to talk about that, and DS Architecture is proud to continue to push that movement forward.
Thank you, Jeff. Gretchen?
Hi, I'm Gretchen Garofoli. I am one of the owners of Oak and Embers Tavern. We have 3 locations, one in Chesterland, one in the new Pinecrest development, and then also one in Hudson. So we're just kind of working together to kind of work through all this and, you know, see what the new future will lead us to.
Terrific. Thank you, Gretchen, and thank you all. And Jeff, on behalf of everybody, thank you for those words, especially as we're all navigating these challenging times. On to the discussion. As our businesses continue to advance Northern Ohio's reopen activities in accordance with state and local guidelines, our panelists are going to spend the next 50 minutes or so discussing the current state of the real estate market and how together property owners and tenants must restructure and reimagine their facility designs and operations. And of course, we want to hear from our business owners on how they've navigated the last 10 to 12 weeks to maintain their operations at the highest levels possible. And again, prepare for success in the new normal. So with that, let's get started. And the first question is going to go to Tori. Tori, as the challenges of COVID-19 presents to our property owners and their tenants are well documented, and they continue to escalate, from increased vacancies to permanent shuttering of operations, requests for rent and tax relief, and more. As we begin to reopen, can you please share your insights as to the impact that these issues have had, and in your estimation will continue to have on the local, regional, and statewide real estate markets in Ohio?
Well, right now, probably what I'm going to say is going to be different than next week or a month from now, but as it stands today, on a positive note, I think that a lot of, I don't think the fall is going to be as bad as we think it's going to be. It's going to be there, but it's not, I don't think it's going to be any worse than what, or even as worse as a recession was 10 years ago. I mean, I know that right now, after speaking to landlords that are large private developers here out of Cleveland, Akron, Canton, all over Ohio, and then even national REITs that we represent and deal with, and also with all of our contacts with other brokers too. I know that landlords on average right now are getting between, from what I've been told, 65 to 75%, and this is an average amount of their rents. Luckily, a lot of the stores, at least in Ohio, that have been allowed to reopen, for instance, I know a couple of clothing retailers where just on reopening, their sales have been up 80%, which is huge because that's only in the past couple weeks. I do feel for the restaurant community there, and also a lot of, because of the fact that they can't be at full capacity, that's not going to work out. I mean, that's not going to work out in the long run. And on a positive note, majority of landlords that I know have worked with their tenants, whether they're large REITs to small mom and pops. Obviously, unfortunately, a lot of retailers out there have taken advantage of the whole COVID thing, just like, you know, during the recession where everyone's asking for a rent break, even if they could pay their rent. That didn't fly because, you know, unless you have the backup to prove it, landlords aren't going to give it. Now, on the other hand, I know a lot of landlords have helped a lot of their mom and pops because a lot, like myself, I feel for small businesses. It's terrible, like what's, you know, going on for them. But at the end of the day, these landlords can only do what their lenders allow them because they're not a bank. And people with CMBS loans, unfortunately, can't give a lot of leeway to their tenants, period. So in my opinion, I think everyone's been pretty positive and doing the best they can. I know a lot of people have gotten their PPP loans. That's obviously not going to help sustain anybody, but it's at least helpful in like a short-term, you know, standpoint. But I guess time will tell. But I mean, right now, I'd say half of our clients are doing deals. And I think we're through the renegotiating part, almost through it, with landlords and tenants deferring rent. So.
That's great. Thank you, Gretchen. And that really leads into, as we think about the reopen, Jeff, I'm going to come to you. You know, so many businesses are looking at reshaping their operations and the redesign of their spaces and internal structures, from workstation flow to operations, and of course the customer experience, right? These are all significant challenges, many of which result in a smaller business operation without, to Gretchen's point, a physical reduction in space or square footage. Can you share with the group what architectural changes are you and your colleagues recommending to your clients as you're working with them to retrofit their facilities? And what advice do you have specifically for the restaurateurs and retailers to accommodate short-term needs during reopen, but quite frankly, maintain long-term flexibility in the future as we are uncertain as to how we will continue to battle COVID, certainly in the short term, or any other pandemic that might surface in the next few years and in the future?
Yeah, so I think this is not the first time that the architectural industry has had to respond to a worldwide or local tragedy. The building code in the United States was actually invented in the 1800s when Chicago caught on fire and burned most of the city down. And that's when the first building code came out. So what we're in right now is what I would call, we're in the temporary operational change area. And so what's going to happen is we'll have these operational changes, social distancing, 25% allowed, et cetera. And now we're starting to see what we call the physical changes, or the temporary physical changes. So you're starting to see these dividers put up at bars, these limited amount of tables. And we all know in the restaurant and retail world that having customers is the key. And what we pay for now is not necessarily the food or the clothes. We pay for the experience, and that experience includes being around other people. And so a kind of funny way is to think about it is get really uncomfortable seats so that when they come in, they get out quick so more people can come in. Once we get through the temporary changes, what's going to happen, and this is where advocates come, is I would not do too much. Do the basic minimum of what's required by COVID temporarily for your physical space, because there's going to be legislation that's going to take a year or two to happen. And they're going to come out with permanent operational changes to the way you operate your retail and restaurants. And they're going to come out to permanent changes on how your spaces are set up. I'll equate this to 9/11. When 9/11 occurred, we had all these temporary changes to the way you could enter and exit airports. And it was very temporary, just like this is. And fast forward 3 years later, every airport in this country was under construction for change. And so I do see that the building codes will be adapted, not necessarily specifically for COVID, but for any type of pandemic in the future. I could see it almost being like a code green, everything's normal, code yellow, and code red. And if you get a code red, you already have your operations manual in place, you already have your physical plan in place, and that's probably already approved by some type of health department to let you know that you're COVID-19 compliant and you can stay open. So I think that's where we are, is the temporary, and we're going to work over the next probably 3 years to get to the permanent. That's where I think we are currently.
Great, thanks, Jeff. As we think about how our restaurateurs and retailers are navigating this, we'll go to Gretchen next. Gretchen, as you and your teams have been really flying the plane as you've built it over the last 3 months in response to COVID, adapting to carry out and pick up, and most certainly making the tough staffing and employment decisions to keep your businesses up and running. Can you talk to us about what your strategy has been as it relates to balancing reopening while maintaining carry out and delivery services? Building on Jeff's comments, share with the group the modifications you've made to the restaurant spaces as you've been allowed to reopen under the governor's orders. And honestly, your experience over the last couple of weeks as you've tried to maximize operations and again, deliver that all important customer experience, which now is beyond certainly just the service you provide at Oak and Embers, but also from a safety perspective.
Well, it has been a difficult couple of months here. When all three of our stores have maintained, we've all been open throughout the whole thing via just carry out, outside dining and now inside dining. So we just kind of adjusted our menus a little bit as far as making them easier for carry-out purposes. We've obviously kind of changed our indoor spaces. We brought in some temporary coverings to a few of our locations that didn't have coverings on the patios, because we found that people do prefer to dine outside. So we brought in some coverings so you know, they can be out there, you know, when it is raining. So we've done those types of things. We brought in plexiglass. I think people are just happy to be out, to be honest. So, you know, I think that the dining experience, what they're looking for is, you know, obviously we try to provide everything that we can to make their dining experience the best, but they've just, I think people are just happy to be out of the house. But as far as our strategy goes, you know, we've just been making changes to the menu, making changes to the dining rooms. We are probably about 50% capacity. Maybe not that low, but depending on all 3 locations, they're all a little bit different. But with the spacing, we're probably lost about 50 to 75 or 50 to 25% of our capacity.
Thanks, Gretchen. And Tori, coming to you following that, is that what you're seeing across the board, as Gretchen articulated, that 25 to 50% capacity issues? Is that pretty standard throughout Ohio that you're seeing in retail and restaurant?
I am, yes.
And I'll follow that up with, you know, we just had some legislation passed by the city of Cleveland, and I know other municipalities are looking at, you know, closure of public streets and broadening service into sidewalk right-of-ways and streets and slowing down traffic. Any thoughts, Gretchen, Jeff, Tori, around that impact? I think it's great that we can open up more space and try to recapture some of that lost square footage. But how do you foresee the challenges around trying to do that sort of expansiveness into a public right-of-way while maintaining social distance?
Deb, I can take a shot at answering that. So I actually have my certificate of urban design. So I think one of the big things with all those temporary provisions that are being put in place is that retail and restaurant owners need to understand that there's the COVID requirements of social distancing, but you need to also be cognizant that there are still the fire codes and building codes in place. And so as we start to look at closing alleyways or sidewalks, we need to be very cognizant of the fact that somebody could still have a emergency and need EMS help inside the restaurant, or we may need to get a fire truck down a certain road. So it's just going to be bigger than just trying, and I'm all with it from the end users, the owners, trying to get as many people to their establishments as possible. It's just going to have to be a balance between getting as many people to the establishments as possible while making sure that we take into account the existing building and fire codes.
Great, thanks, Jeff. Gretchen, from an operational standpoint, do you see that as beneficial if we can work through those challenges? I know it's short term in Northeast Ohio often because of weather patterns.
Right. I mean, right now, all 3 of my locations, it doesn't really apply because we're not on kind of streets that would allow that. My Hudson location and my Pinecrest location have pretty good sized patios. So, you know, we're able to utilize those, but I don't really have spaces that I could maybe expand out to, you know, if that is permitted, just personally with my spaces.
Great, thank you. And again, really to all 3 of you, as we think about your businesses and what you've all faced in your respective industries, have all of you been able to access or pursued access to leverage the CARES Act resources that are available through PPP and EIDL, or local resources that may exist at municipal or county levels? Jeff, have you guys pursued anything, and I'd ask all three of you to comment on your success or potentially avoidance of those kinds of resources.
Yeah, I feel like my full-time job over the last several months has been what I call the SBA hat. Just basically trying to navigate the PPP, the EIDL, and also the city of Cleveland has a $10,000 grant that we applied for. We were able to achieve the PPP and EIDL grants, and we're still waiting to hear from Cleveland. Our industry, architecture, is interesting because we're usually the very forefront of the economy. So the Architectural Billing Index is one of the very first things that economists look at to see what the future of the economy is going to be, because right after Tory sells a space or gets a deal done, the very next step is getting the architect involved to start designing the space. And so if we're busy, that means a year or 18 months from now, the contractors are going to be busy. And that means in 2 to 3 years, there's going to be new spaces and new developments, commercial developments done. So we're kind of projecting forward. We've seen, so the first month we were probably 80% capacity. Last month it was 60, and we're going to be at 40 this month, which is what I expected. I do anticipate as this month proceeds forward that a lot of our clients, be it hospitals and higher education institutions, are the big ones that really kind of put everything on hold. I do see them starting to release projects in June to start back up. So I'm hoping we start to climb out in July and August. But for the bigger economy, this means that the contractors, and if you talk to contractors, they really have not slowed down at all during this. If something's under construction, the owner wants it done immediately, as fast as possible, so they can start generating revenue. And potentially 8 months, a year from now, you may see a little dip in the construction industry, or if we pick up fast enough as architects, we might not see that dip in the construction. So I kind of get mixed reviews from talking to some of the big contractors in the city on what their outlook is, but they're all very busy now. So I think the PPP and the EIDL, what it is really allowing me to do is keep my talent, because in architecture, we're only as strong as our talent, keep our talent with us. So when we pick back up, we can do a good job.
Thanks, Jeff. Gretchen, Tori, would you like to add?
We did apply for the PPP loans, and we got them during the second round. And we were able to bring the majority of our staff back. Some of them had found other jobs or were not uncomfortable coming back, et cetera. But I mean, we've kind of been using that to obviously pay our employees and, you know, do the things that we need to do to adhere to the new laws.
Thanks, Gretchen. Tori, anything to add?
No, I'm glad to hear majority of people though have gotten at least a PPP loans. I know that there are a handful of grants depending on like what kind of business you own out there too. So.
Yeah, Tori, on other resources for relief, as you talk to your property owners and you mentioned the vacancies and levels that they're at, which maybe is exceeding expectation, but certainly nowhere near where we were before all of this happened. One of the things I've been hearing from real estate professionals and developers we've worked with is more assistance around property tax relief and really bracing for what could be a very heavy docket at a board of revision going forward around value because of this in the next 9, 12, 18 months. What are you hearing from your clients and property owners around not just the delay of property tax payments, but additional relief that they may be pursuing either through property valuations or assistance from their local municipal and county partners?
Personally, I have not heard as any detail into what they're doing about their property taxes yet, because the thing is majority of them are still leased. I mean, the fallout hasn't happened yet. I mean, we're going to see a fallout once, say, if anyone's been thrown into default, which not as many people as many tenants as you think have been thrown into default, because most landlords, I think, are being optimist and deferring rents and seeing what they could do, or doing percentage rents to keep people going. Because obviously, you know, we've had the best real estate market for years now, where mostly everything is filled, and you know, they like to keep it that way and not have to deal with the costs of having to, you know, put another tenant in. You know, it's more costly to do that. It's easier to keep them if you could get them up to where they were, you know, with their rents and whatnot. So I don't know. I've not heard anybody talking about it because a lot of people are even at 95% in which they're getting their rent. So I don't know. I'm not aware of anything yet.
Great, thank you. Gretchen, I'm going to come back to you. You know, we've talked a lot about space and adaptation of the real estate itself, but obviously there's just increased operational costs all around, from stories around rising food costs and in fact food shortages, and also requirements on utilization of the one-time, you know, quote unquote throwaway supplies, whether it's the menus, the utensils, the flatware. And of course, you already touched a little bit on staffing levels and employees not wanting to return, but as you position for reopen and you look over the next 30, 60, 90 days, how much impact is these additional costs and mandates around utilization of you know, throwaway supplies affecting your reopen and your overall cost structure of the operations of the business?
We haven't switched over to throwaway. Our menus are actually printed on a type of paper that is wipeable. So we got lucky in that. I don't see us moving to throwaway menus just because of the additional cost. Our biggest issues right now are finding the supplies. To-go boxes are hard to find. Bags are hard to find. Actual product, we are a smokehouse. So our proteins are meats. So our prices have almost tripled on some things, especially beef. We've had some issues with pork, getting that in. So we're scrambling, utilizing every single one of our suppliers to try and get the product. We've gotten lucky and we haven't run out. So, you know, there have been shortages, but it's just utilizing every single person that we know to try and, you know, it used to be so easy just to, you know, place the order and it would come in and that would be fine. And then as far as staffing goes, you know, it's, you know, I did lose some staff. Some staff they've decided that they don't want to come back. Frankly, they're making more on unemployment than what they were making here. So a lot of them have moved on from us, but we're just kind of moving along, trying to keep the wheels turning. But those are our biggest issues right now, is just keeping product in place.
Great, thank you. Jeff, back to you. You know, we talked a lot about, and you were kind enough to share the slide as to thought processes around reopen, social distance, et cetera. But one of the things we're hearing a lot about, and in fact, we've been able to host a couple of webinars at GCP on, are, you know, preparing the site and preparing the space for long-term investments for innovation solutions. We hear about UV light, robots, sanitation pods and resources, and a lot of conversation around HVAC system redesign that can help mitigate exposure amongst the crisis and going forward. Beyond retrofitting the space in compliance with local and state reopen mandates, what have your clients identified as their 2 or 3 biggest concerns in the space over the next 3 to 6 months and heading into 2021?
Yeah, I think the biggest concern for our clients, be it in the restaurant and retail sector or in any public sector, is making sure that they are providing the safest environment possible to the patrons. There's been some talk and fear about, you know, I'm reopening, but if my restaurant becomes the epicenter of 12 people getting COVID, am I going to be liable? And I know legislation is working through that to try to make sure that those individuals, those owners, are protected. From a physical space standpoint, restaurants are set up typically where the front of the house, which is where we enjoy the meals and stuff, and the back of the house aren't so different in size. There might be a 60-40% split there. And so from a revenue standpoint, staying open for 50-60% of your typical revenue is very difficult. And I think the PPP, and Gretchen could probably expand upon this, but the PPP is probably helping gap that difference. But when the PPP runs out, the margins are thin and they need to be operating at 80, 90, 100% capacity. So trying to produce as much revenue as you can while trying to limit the risk of the individuals. And right now it's operational. I think most of the things that the owners are doing is operational, from specific types of cleaning to certain patterns, meaning you're only going to enter the restaurant on the left and you're going to make a big circle and exit on the right. Those are the type of things that are occurring now. And I would tell restaurant owners and retailers to do what you think is best, but do what the minimum is required right now. Don't get too ahead of yourselves, because there will be legislation and code changes that will come out. Typically in the past, existing occupancies, restaurants, retails do not need to meet the newest code. For instance, there was a fire at a nightclub in the northeastern United States where they had like 300 people, and they had locked the doors and there were pyrotechnics, and it burned down, and a lot of people had died there. And the code change a year later that required any space that allows more than 100 people to have a full suppression system, fire suppression system. Well, the existing restaurants didn't need to go back and add that, but anything that was new had to have that. So I envision this being very similar. I do think that the physical space is very interesting, and that's what we all can conceptualize. But I think what you hit on is the mechanical spaces and the way we use those systems to try to help mitigate this type of stuff. And you can, and I won't go into great detail, but you can use what's called negative pressure. And you can think of a hospital room that somebody is sick in. What you want to do is be pushing air towards that room and not letting air get out. And I could start to see those type of things being implemented in public spaces, in retail spaces, maybe HEPA filters or UV light, or even some type of night vision goggles to see if there's an area of a table that hasn't been cleaned properly. This is all speculation. We haven't heard anything, but that's finalized, but these are all things I could see happening.
Thanks, Jeff.
Oh, sorry. This is Amber. I just want to chime in real quick just to remind the attendees that you can submit questions via the Q&A box, so we can have some questions for the panelists at the end of the discussion. Thank you.
Thanks, Amber. Tori, from your perspective, and I know that, it was unfortunate we had a conflict with our retail representative today, but obviously, online retail shopping has grown in popularity for years, and certainly the industry has made adaptations during the crisis. Jeff's talked a lot about structure and how not to get out too fast. How are the retail tenants that you represent, the traditional retailers, responding right now? We've had so many that have had to close their doors. And as you look at and analyze nationally across the retail industry, it's such a different perspective than office, traditional industry, and restaurant. What do you see happening in the immediate future for retail in Northeast Ohio and the clients you represent?
Well, luckily, some of the clients we represent, such as Dollar Tree, Family Dollar stores, Meijer, even Speedway gas stations, are all very active, even right now, doing deals. I think from what I've seen, some stores, retailers, even salons, require that you wear a face mask. Not all of them. I've seen them more or less beef up what their employees are doing, such as they do have to wear face masks. They have put up the plexiglass. They have only some retailers, have marked the 6 feet. They are pushing, enforcing that you stay 6 feet away, with your carts when you're in line, when you're in the aisles. That's about the most that I've seen them do, and they've all seemed to be pretty consistent across the board. You know, whether you're going to Costco or Trader Joe's or you know, a Dollar Tree or whatnot. Now the salons are way more beefed up from what I've seen with the curtains. They'll take your temperature. You know, they're definitely, I don't think they could do much more, really.
No, understood. And staying with you for the moment, you know, as we've all entered the virtual world, we see story after story of real estate entering the virtual world as well, around property tours and site visits through the web and internet, both for residential and retail commercial. How much has Anchor Cleveland been able to engage in those kinds of virtual tour sessions, and what success are you having?
Well, from day one, people still want to see the spaces live. We have not done a single video tour. Nobody has requested it that we work with, or potential prospects to any spaces we lease. But even retailers that we deal with too, where we have to go show them spaces with their ops guys and whatnot. I mean, we just all wear masks. We all obviously don't handshake anymore. That's
Right.
over with. But no, everyone wears masks though, and they also, we just appropriately keep our distances, and people just, they still want to see it in person. I do know a colleague of mine that did do this is right after it happened, where there were so many unknowns and everyone was clogged in their houses, where they did do literally a whole they videotaped a whole site tour, and then they put it on their slides and sent it to, this is for a big national retailer that's still continuing to do deals. And, you know, they went over all the sites and whatnot, but that was the only one that I even heard of, even from my competitors, that's been done that way. Mostly people will just drive in separate cars and meet at the sites.
Good, good. Hopefully we'll start seeing more and more of that, and more
Yeah.
pickups as
They won't get in my car, you know, they won't get in your car with you,
Right,
but they'll follow you.
Right. Well, given my driving record, most people wouldn't get in my
Yeah.
car anyway, but that's for another
Mhm.
discussion. Great, appreciate that. The last question, and we're really staying at that high level industry focus on the real estate. Tori, and the retail restaurant associations at a national level, and even in the independent for Gretchen, what are the associations are you aware of as they look to advocate for either additional assistance or criteria or funding positions at local, state, and national levels as we try to work our way out of this crisis and get into the new normal? Has either the real estate industry association nationally or the restaurant industry nationally or locally been able yet to identify, you know, those top 2, 3, 4, 5 criteria that you want to advocate for and are driving at government reforms, either again at mayoral, governor, or federal levels? Gretchen, I'll start with you on the restaurant side.
Well, I believe that the Senate was looking into passing a flexibility act for the PPP loans, so kind of adapting it a little bit more to the restaurants. So the Restaurant Association has been working with them to try and get that changed for us, just because some of the things didn't really work. You know, some of our staff didn't come back, so it gives us a little bit of flexibility. I believe they're extending the period of the loan as far as the payback. So they are doing those types of things. I think each sector is so different that just one, you know, one thing, it doesn't work for every single type of business.
Exactly.
So I think that, you know, each individual sector's representation, you know, it is a big thing to think about, because everything is different. I don't operate the same way with the same standards that, you know, let's say you know, a retailer would or a hairdresser. So I think we're just, you know, in the Restaurant Association and a lot of the larger liquor companies, beer companies, you know, put put together things for staffing, you know, while they were off, so that they could, you know, get those grants and get that help that they needed to help support them through all this.
Thank you. Tori, anything to add from the real estate associations?
I know International Council of Shopping Centers, which we refer to as ICSC, has been huge advocating. I mean, if you go to their website, I mean, they have a list bullet pointed with small businesses, big businesses, restaurants, like all the relief that's out there right now for them that they, you know, ICSC has all the links and can assist them with. But from a government standpoint, I think I get emails at least once a week to sign petitions for various things that they're, you know, going, you know, to Capitol Hill to fight for, you know, in regards to like Main Street lending. They have, you know, various things that, you know, that they're doing, you know, to advocate for the recovery.
Thank you. Jeff, AIA, anything out of your associations locally and nationally?
Yeah, so American Institute of Architects has been big on trying to, last time we had our, in 2008 when we had our recession, a lot of the shovel-ready projects for the stimulus package were what we call horizontal. So they were roadways and bridges and utilities, and they're pushing hard for it to include vertical shovel-ready projects. What I've been hearing is that the federal government is positioning what the next set of funding. So a lot of the funding that's happened to PPP and EIDL has been about stabilization of the private businesses. But there is a big fallout at the local municipality level because a lot of revenue is not coming in. So what I understand is this next phase, this stimulus package to get the economy started, is they're going to be funding money to the states and the states to the municipalities, and the municipalities to get shovel-ready projects, be it first responders or clinics or whatnot. That is what we're hearing that they're trying to funnel the money towards to get the local governments back up. And by getting their projects under construction, those contractors, those architects have to pay the taxes in the cities where those projects are being done. So that is the direction that I've heard AIA is trying to take the federal government with their stimulus package.
That's great. Thank you. I'll take a moment for just to remind folks, again, as the Chamber of Commerce, we have through our website at gcpingear.com, that's gcpingear, INGEAR.com, we have created a couple of key pages over the course of the last 12 weeks, both an employer now hiring page. Tori, you mentioned Dollar General, Drug Mart. When you look at the grocery stores, so many industry and opportunities across industries for gainful employment. To our panelists, to the folks listening, if you, your business, your clients are looking for qualified candidates, please consider posting on our Employer Now hiring page. Likewise, a B2B portal, business portal was created in the last 12 weeks. And if you are a supplier of industry, Gretchen, you mentioned getting the supplies, getting the food, getting the shortages, the things that you need for daily operation. Encourage everyone to take a look at it and participate. If you're interested, let Amber know, let me know, and we'll make sure to get one of our team members in contact with you or your businesses. Again, it's our responsibility to continue to really churn this system and make sure we're doing the best we can to connect Northeast Ohio businesses to opportunity. A little bit of a shameless plug maybe, but we really want you guys to have as much exposure as possible to let folks know what you're doing, your continuous operations and efforts as we all seek to recover from this crisis. So we're coming up into the 45-minute mark. Again, as Amber mentioned, if any of our participants have questions, comments, please submit them through the chat box on the system. I'm going to ask all of our finalists right now the same final question, and it might be a little bit repetitive, but from your chairs, what you've all witnessed and experienced in the last 12 weeks or so, you know, if you could give one piece of advice, again, whether it's to local level government officials, the governor, who's done a tremendous job for Ohio, and our federal leaders. What one piece of advice for your business specifically would you want to give to that leadership and to our organization and NAIOP as associations and agencies that represent you that could help put you in the best position to stabilize, recover, and advance your business operations in the future? Gretchen, I'll start with you.
I mean, I think we just need some time and leniency to kind of work through this. Our business has changed. We need a full house of guests to make our business plan work. To stay in business. So I think just any support, and unfortunately nobody knows what might happen down the road. What we can really expect. So I think everybody just needs the time. Will that be the landlords, the banks, the suppliers? Unfortunately, we're all just kind of taking this day by day, just to kind of figure out how we can move to the next day.
Thanks, Gretchen. Tori?
I think that I know this probably will never happen, but from a realistic standpoint, they always say you need to have, if you got fired from your job, 6 months to a year's worth of your, salary put away. And I think that is very true advice. And I think that our government, these PPP loans are unfortunately not going to sustain in any way, shape, or form any of these businesses. I mean, you really need, if you think, especially with the restaurant industry and the smaller retailers, for them to even remotely survive, they need at least 6 months to a year's worth. And I think they need to reform what the definition of a small business is. I mean, in my opinion, it is not a company with 500 employees. I think they need to break down and define small, medium-sized, and large corporations better in deciding how they're going to distribute funds.
Thank you, Tori. Jeff, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, this whole situation is bananas. I think stillness is the word I would use. We need to be still and calm in the ever-changing environment. Be patient with each other, support each other. I think what I would tell my local legislators is that as the mandates come down, because, and I'll use the example of the fire suppression system, where it used to be 300 people or more, you need a fire suppression, and now it's 100 more, you need fire suppression. As these mandates come out, you should be helping financially these owners with that burden and that cost. It is way more costly not to help them and them not open or go out of business, or we go down the road several years and a restaurant or retail wasn't able to afford something and they were grandfathered in, and so they didn't put a specific type of filter in or mechanical system. I think we need to be thinking about helping small businesses foot the cost of these mandates and these regulations that are likely to come down the road.
Great feedback from all of you, and incredible to hear from you as experts. And we are in great time here. We're right about at 50 minutes, and Amber has let me know that we do have some questions for the three of you from our participants. So Amber, could you please jump in and let us know what our guests are thinking?
Thank you, Deb, and thank you to the panelists for a great discussion so far. The first question is for Tori. Do you think retailers will increasingly move towards online sales and therefore need less square footage for brick and mortar stores? Or do you think that there will always be a place for brick and mortar so people can browse?
It depends on which type of segment it is, as we all know. I mean, and like, for instance, we're social beings at the end of the day, and people still like to go out. They still want to touch, see, and feel what they're buying. I mean, we've had online sales now for over a decade, and it has hurt certain segments, but I don't think it's ever going to hurt all of them. And I think that's, in some cases, there are retailers that may downsize their prototype, but there's some that may, easily can get bigger too, and still grow. It just depends on how, their sales are. Now, restaurants, in my opinion, this is going to be a whole other topic, because even now I've been getting letters of intents from smaller users that are under 2,500 square feet, where, they want to make sure, especially on new construction, because we lease mostly new construction all over Ohio, where they want a drive-up window, they want drive-throughs, and we've had landlords scurrying and revising and changing plans and creating, instead of one building for say 4 to 5 tenants or more, doing 2 smaller buildings so they can accommodate these drive-throughs or pickup windows, because they know that's going to be the wave of the future, especially if this ever happens again. I mean, I know that, tenants out there like Panera Bread and even, Chipotle just started doing drive-throughs now. That's all they're going to be doing. They're going to make sure of it, because that's the only way they're going to hang on in order to stay alive, and keep their growth and their employees. So
Great, thank you. Gretchen, kind of off of that, I guess my question is, with Uber Eats and Grubhub and the other type of kind of third-party pickup vendors that are out there, does that help you as a business owner, as a restaurant owner?
There's advantages and disadvantages to using those companies. The disadvantage is the cost to the restaurant. Most of those do charge a fee to the restaurant, so they can promote your restaurant and obviously pay their staff and make their business work. But unfortunately, their costs are so high that it doesn't really benefit me to utilize their services. But I mean, we are signed up with a few of those companies, but some of them are just unrealistic as far, I'd basically be giving the food away once I pay their fees.
Gotcha. Thank you. And then Jeff, has there been any rising costs that you've seen from an architectural standpoint? Any shortages to plexiglass and different things like that companies are using to retrofit to meet these new standards?
It's hard to speculate on that because we're so early in, and say we're 3 months in, the shortages, we're not as fast as the food shortages that we're talking about, but I do anticipate us having material shortages. We're very much an import country of materials that are manufactured in other countries, including China, India, which are hit very hard. So I do anticipate there being some type of escalation until supply and demand re-equal each other. We haven't seen any of that as of yet. I haven't heard of any materials or products or systems that are in back order. But I do anticipate that happening over the next 6 months to a year.
Thank you. And then I have one final question, but I will remind anyone, if you have any questions, please submit them via the Q&A box. And this is for all the speakers. What do you see as your biggest challenge, and also what's your opportunities as you look at the next 30, 60, 90, possibly the next year?
Well, I think our biggest challenge as an industry is learning, and we need to react to what we've learned. And I just think we're so early into this, and so focused on the health, safety, and welfare of the individuals that may get sick, that we haven't really given great thought to the physical environment that we will be living in. I don't know if there's any research. Where did 6 feet come from? Can it be 4 feet? Does it need to be 8 feet? Why 10 people? Why isn't it 12? I just think that there was a lot of decisions made with good intentions that need to be backed up with science. And that will ultimately be why I think it's going to be 3 years before the final regulations come out for COVID-19 or whatever they call that section of the code, because there's going to be a lot of research, just like there's a lot of research going into developing a shot, some type of antibody or whatever, there's going to be a lot of research into how the physical environment will be changed, both inside the building and outside the building.
Tori, thoughts?
For the future, I mean, we don't, again, like we take it day by day. I mean, for my industry as a broker, I'm not really sure how it's going to pan out because I don't think it's going to be as bad as the recession was. I think that luckily we're in America and there's always going to be companies and money and people out there doing deals. And, you know, I won't ever forget this, and it came true. Like when I was an intern 20 years ago, they said you'll make your most money in the down times versus the good times. And it's true though. I mean, I think the thing is there will be fallout from this, just like during the recession time. But I mean, you just got to focus on who is aggressive and who's out there doing deals and making money, and you just have to ride that train.
Thank you. And Gretchen, again, a tough question, but as you have been through this now for the last almost 3 months, and what opportunities do you see as obviously the continuing challenges you've articulated?
Well, I think, you know, the biggest challenge we've had is, you know, trying to figure out how we can, you know, make that bottom line work for our business. You know, obviously our carryout business has increased, even though our inside dining has decreased. So we're hoping that kind of will level out and get us even to where we were before all this happened. And I think the biggest opportunity we have is just to kind of get in front of people in a different way, maybe. You know, maybe the delivery services will kind of change their business plan. Maybe we incorporate our own delivery. You know, just maybe retrofitting our spaces, you know, to allow, you know, working with landlords to say, hey, I'm paying this much for, you know, square feet, but I need more square feet than I ever did before, you know, to allow for that spacing.
Great, thank you. Amber, are we good to go on the questions? So we're nearing the hour.
That was all the questions that came through, unless anyone has any last minute questions, or even amongst the panelists, if you have questions for one another, if you want to ask.
I want to compliment Tori on her optimism with this not being, I don't think this will be 2008. If you look back through the history of different economies, at one time we were an agricultural economy, at one time we were a manufacturing economy, at one time we were a tech economy. We are what I consider a experience economy. We pay for experiences. Look at Top Golf, things like that. We pay for experiences. So I think, you know, the fears about online shopping or going all digital, that's true, but look how long it's been around, and look at it still has a small segment when you really think about what they're producing compared to the bricks and mortar. So we are an experience, especially in our culture in America, we are experience driven. So I don't expect it to be as bad as some of the talking heads make it out to be. Just like maybe there was, it's not as bad, the whole situation not as bad. Maybe we overreacted, maybe we didn't, but listening to the talking heads is always dangerous.
I would like to compliment you for that, because it's true. I don't even watch the regular news, barely ever. It is American-based news is, especially after living in Europe, you know, it's extremely fear-based. If you kind of want to get an unbiased opinion, listen to BBC or Sky News over there. I think at the end of the day, we being in a first world economy and society, we all want to keep things and the wheels turning and going, and support ourselves, each other, our families, and make the best lives, you know, possible. You know, we're not in some war-torn country or anything. So I think that, and also to add to that, another statistic ICSC came out pre-COVID, just to remind everybody that, you know, it's only 7% of sales that are online sales at the end of the day with the retailers that exist right now. Right. So, you know, even pre-COVID, I mean, Barnes and Noble sales, even though they sell, I mean, Amazon was based off of and born out of selling books online, their sales have we're up in a lot of locations because we get their, you know, in at least the areas that we're doing deals, we get updated sales. So I do pray that our economy does go back and that all the politicians, you know, I'm not party based at all. I'm an independent. And I just think that people need to start thinking about people and keeping the economy going, because the economy prevents this outrage that we've seen. So
Thanks, Tori.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Gretchen, any closing comments from you before I wrap this up?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, Tori said it earlier, you know, we are social people. We do want to get out. We do want to see friends and family. And, you know, this has been tough on everybody, you know, from a mental standpoint. And I think that, you know, just getting out in the capacity that we are able to is what we need to do, you know, even if it's just for, you know, a short period.
Thanks, Gretchen. I would like to just take this opportunity to thank the three of you. How fortunate we are that you would give us this time. How fortunate we are that you are business leaders and representatives in this community, and the investment and commitment that you have to this region and to the operation. Can't thank you all enough. We know the strain you've been under. I'd also like to take this final moment to extend my thanks again to the NAIOP Northern Ohio Women's Leadership Committee and NAIOP in general. It has been my absolute privilege to be your moderator today. To all of our participants, thank you so much for staying through this conversation. We look forward to being back in touch with you soon. And I hope everybody has a very good day and an enjoyable weekend. So thank you all very much, and we'll look forward to talking with you again soon.
Thank you.